Welcome to Reformed Thinking. Today we're doing a deep dive into, well, one of the most significant books in the entire Old Testament, the book of Daniel.
It really is. And to get it, you have to start with the historical setting. We're talking about the darkest period in Israel's history, the Babylonian exile.
Right, this is roughly 605 to 536 BC, a defeated people dragged from their homes. And what we want to do today is look at the theological message of this book for those people and for us.
Exactly, because Daniel's mission, you could say, was fundamentally pastoral. It was meant to give theological steel to the faithful. I mean, the pressure to just give up and assimilate into Babylonian culture must have been overwhelming.
I can't even imagine. Your capital city is destroyed, the temple is gone, and its holy vessels are now trophies in the temple of a pagan god Marduk.
So the question they were facing was, did our God Yahweh actually lose? Is he weaker than the gods of Babylon? It's an existential crisis.
And Daniel answers that with a resounding no. But before we get into the text itself, it's good to remember why they were there in the first place. This wasn't random.
Not at all.
Yeah.
This was the direct result of centuries of covenant violation, something spelled out in graphic detail back in Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28. This was the covenant curse enacted.
So the core question Daniel is answering isn't just, can God save us? But is God still in control even when everything looks like he's lost?
That's it. And the book presents the answer in this really brilliant structure, especially chapters 2 through 7. They're laid out in what's called a chiastic structure.
Okay, that sounds a little academic. For someone new to this, how can we picture what that means?
Well, you can think of it like a set of bookends or maybe nested mirrors. The outer chapters 2 and 7, they mirror each other. They both cover the whole sweep of world history.
The statue dream and the four beasts vision.
Exactly. Then you move in a layer, and you have chapter 3, the fiery furnace, and chapter 6, the lion's den. Both are about the deliverance of the faithful. And then at the very center, you have chapter 4, the humbling of Nebuchadnezzar, and chapter 5, the fall of Belshazzar. Both are about God's direct sovereignty over proud kings. The structure itself reinforces the central message.
So for our discussion, we can follow that flow. We'll look at it through three big overlapping themes that come out of that structure. The deliverance of the faithful, then the humbling of the proud, and finally, Yahweh's total control over all of history.
Sound good?
Okay, so let's start with that first theme, deliverance under pressure, and this model of faithfulness we see in Daniel and his friends, which kicks off right away in chapter 1.
It does. And the symbolic weight of what's happening is just immense. It's not just a military conquest. When they take the vessels from God's temple and put them in their God's temple.
It's a statement. It's a theological declaration of victory.
It is. But then the author gives us this little geographical clue in verse 2. It says they were taken to the land of Shinar.
Schreiner. That phrase has some deep Old Testament history, doesn't it?
Oh, it's huge. Shinar is the location of the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11.
Ah, okay.
So by using that specific name, the author is framing this whole Babylonian project as a revival of that original humanistic rebellion against God. Nebuchadnezzar is being set up as a kind of new Nimrod.
So it's not just another empire, it's the archetypal city of man setting itself up against the city of God.
Precisely. And that raises the stakes for everything Daniel does next.
Which brings us to what seems like a really small test, almost a trivial one, the food from the king's table. Daniel and his friends are supposed to eat the king's food and drink his wine, and Daniel just resolves not to.
And it's so easy to skim over that, but you're right. For a Jew in exile, this was a massive deal. There are a few reasons why this food would be considered defiling.
What are the main theories?
Well, the first and most obvious is that it probably wasn't kosher. It violated the dietary laws from the Torah. That's straightforward enough.
Sure.
A second, and maybe more serious reason, is that this food would have almost certainly been offered to Babylonian idols first before being served.
Right. So to eat it would be to participate, even indirectly, in idolatry.
You'd be compromising right out of the gate. But there's a third possibility, which is maybe the broadest one. Daniel and his friends just needed to draw a line. A clear one.
To distinguish themselves.
Yes. Israel's whole problem, leading to the exile, was blurring the lines, mixing paganism with true worship. So for these young men, this was their stand. They chose simple vegetables and water over the luxury and the spiritual compromise of the king's court.
I like that phrase you used earlier, theological steel. This is them forging it. And what's so interesting is how God's sovereignty then works with their obedience.
Yeah, the perfect illustration. Daniel makes a choice, but he's still in a dangerous position. He petitions the official, And the text says God gave Daniel favor with that official.
So Daniel acts, and God opens the door for that action to succeed.
Yes. The message for the exiles listening to this story would be so encouraging. When you resolve to obey God, He will manage the circumstances around you.
And the result of their faithfulness directly counters the fear that they would become, irrelevant or weak in this new culture.
Quite the opposite. God gives them wisdom and intellectual skill that surpasses all the Babylonian magicians and enchanters. They end up excelling.
So the lesson is, you don't have to compromise your faith to have influence.
Right. If you honor God, even when it's risky, He can grant you the very skills you need to serve His purposes right where you are, even in the heart of a pagan system. It's the blueprint for surviving exile with your soul intact.
So moving from that personal test in chapter 1, we get to a much more public corporate stand in chapter 3 with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yeah, the stage gets a lot bigger here. Nebuchadnezzar builds this enormous golden image, 90 feet tall.
The size has to be intentional.
Oh, for sure. This wasn't just some personal statue. It was a monument to his claim of worldwide dominion. It's another echo of Babel I ruler demanding total religious and political allegiance from everyone.
And the conflict is simple: bow down or die, a direct violation of the first 2 commandments.
It is. And Nebuchadnezzar gives them a second chance, but their answer is just. It's one of the high points of Scripture.
They say, "Our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods."
But if not, those 3 words are everything.
It's such a powerful statement of faith. It's not a guarantee of a good outcome. It's a statement of allegiance regardless of the outcome.
It is. And this is where we need to be careful with the interpretation. Their miraculous rescue from that furnace, which was heated 7 times hotter than normal,
Right.
that shouldn't be read as a universal promise that every faithful person will be spared from suffering or death. That's just not how it works, and it would lead to a very brittle faith.
So if it's not a promise of individual escape, what's the theological message for the whole exiled community?
The message is corporate. It's an assurance to the nation of Israel. It tells them, first, that resisting idolatry is the right and necessary path. And second, that the nation as a whole would be preserved and restored, even if some individuals were to perish.
So it's a promise about God's covenant faithfulness to his people as a group.
Exactly. His saving plan for them will not be thwarted by this fiery trial. And of course, the appearance of that 4th figure in the furnace, who looks like a son of the gods.
Often seen as a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ.
Right. It reinforces the idea that God is with them in their suffering, not just watching from a distance.
And we see the same pattern play out again in chapter 6 with Daniel in the lion's den. It's a very similar structure.
You have a conspiracy by jealous rivals. You have Daniel defying an unjust law, this time about prayer. And you have the threat of a gruesome execution.
The irony being, they can't find any fault with his work, so they have to attack his faith.
Which is a huge compliment, really. And the law from King Darius, banning prayer to anyone but him for 30 days, was just a setup, a trap.
And Daniel doesn't hide. He prays publicly, facing Jerusalem, just as he always did. It's that same resolved obedience.
Yes. And Yahweh intervenes again, shutting the mouths of the lions. But there's a deeper layer here at some point, too, this comparison of Daniel to a kind of second Adam.
Okay, unpack that a little.
Well, in Genesis 1, Adam was given dominion over the beasts of the field. He was meant to rule creation in a harmonious way. The fall broke that.
Right.
So when God shuts the lion's mouth for Daniel, it's a demonstration that Daniel, through his faithfulness, is experiencing a temporary restoration of that righteous Adamic dominion. The beasts are subject to him.
That's a fascinating connection. It's like a little preview of a restored creation, and it sets the stage for the ultimate human ruler, the Son of Man, that we'll meet later on.
Absolutely. The book is already planting these seeds, but the immediate effect of the deliverance is, once again, on the pagan king.
Right, Darius. He's distraught when he has to throw Daniel in, and he's overjoyed when he finds him alive.
And then he issues this incredible decree. He declares that Yahweh is the living God, enduring forever, whose kingdom shall never be destroyed.
So once again, the faithfulness of an exile forces a pagan superpower to confess the truth about the God of Israel.
Yes. If these exiles can do that, it's proof for the whole community that their God hasn't been defeated at all. He is in complete sovereign control. It's a message of profound security.
So that first section gives us the model for faithfulness. But the next section, the center of the chiasm, shifts the camera, so to speak. It focuses on the humbling of these proud rulers.
It's the other side of the same coin, really. If God is going to protect his people, He also has to be able to judge and control the powerful people who oppress them.
And it starts with Nebuchadnezzar's own story in chapter 4, which is told in the first person.
Which is amazing in itself. He has this dream he can't get out of his head. He's this huge, magnificent tree that covers the whole earth, providing for everyone.
The very image of a successful, benevolent empire.
It is, but then a watcher, a holy one from heaven, comes down and orders the tree to be chopped down because of the king's pride.
And when Daniel is called to interpret this, he doesn't just deliver the bad news. He actually gives the king an off-ramp. He gives him advice.
He does. And the advice is really telling. He tells Nebuchadnezzar to practice righteousness and show mercy to the oppressed.
That's the ethical standard of the God of Israel.
It is. Daniel is calling a pagan king to govern with justice and compassion. It shows that God holds all rulers accountable to a moral standard, not just his own covenant people.
But, of course, the king doesn't listen. A year later, he's surveying his kingdom and says, "Is not this great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power for the glory of my majesty?"
And that's the trigger, the sin of self-glorification, attributing to himself what God had allowed him to have. And the judgment is immediate and bizarre.
He loses his mind. He's driven out to live like an animal for 7 years.
It's the perfect, ironic judgment. The man who saw himself as the pinnacle of humanity is reduced to a bestial state. It's a shocking reversal of the dominion mandate.
And it confirms what we see later in the beast visions, that human rule, when it tries to replace God, actually becomes less than human.
Exactly. But the climax of the chapter isn't the judgment, it's his restoration. After 7 years, his sanity returns, and he makes this incredible confession.
He praises the King of Heaven and says, "Those who walk in pride, he is able to humble."
And he says the key phrase for the entire book: "The Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will."
That line must have been like water in the desert for the exiles.
Absolutely. It meant that Babylon's power was not absolute. It was a temporary assignment from Yahweh. The rise and fall of empires isn't random chaos. It's all part of a divine plan. That gives you a bedrock of security to stand on.
So if Nebuchadnezzar is the proud king who learns his lesson, Belshazzar in chapter 5 is the one who absolutely refuses to.
He's the perfect foil. Daniel explicitly calls him out on it, saying he knew what happened to Nebuchadnezzar, but still didn't humble his heart. This isn't ignorance, it's willful defiance.
And an act of defiance is just stunning in its arrogance. He's having a feast, gets drunk, and calls for the sacred vessels from the Jerusalem temple.
And he and his court drink wine from them while praising their gods of gold and silver. It's a direct physical assault on the honor of Yahweh. He is lifting himself up against the Lord of heaven.
And the judgment is just as swift. The fingers of a human hand appear and start writing on the wall.
And just like before, the king's wise men are completely useless. They can't interpret it, which again shows the bankruptcy of their pagan wisdom.
So they have to call in Daniel.
Right. And before Daniel even tells him what it means, he gives him this blistering sermon, reminding him of what happened to Nebuchadnezzar and how he failed to learn from it.
And the message on the wall, mene, tekel, the farson, is basically, you've been numbered, you've been weighed, you've been found wanting, and your kingdom is finished.
And that very night, Belshazzar is killed, and the kingdom falls to the Medes and Persians.
The message for the Jews in exile, then, seeing this contrast between the two kings, is just so clear.
Crystal clear. Don't put your trust in this worldly superpower. Don't be seduced by its wealth or its gods. These mighty kings only rule by Yahweh's permission for a limited time. The empire that seems eternal can fall in a single night.
Okay, so from these personal stories of faithfulness and judgment, the book then zooms out dramatically. We move to the big prophetic visions that cover the whole scope of history.
We do. Chapters 2 and 7 are the structural and theological core of the book.
And we have to start by just acknowledging how supernatural this is. In chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar doesn't just ask for an interpretation of his dream.
No, he asks them to tell him the dream itself, which he's forgotten. It's an impossible test, designed to expose them all as frauds.
And Daniel's ability to do it comes only after he and his friends pray. It's a direct gift from God.
Yes, and Daniel makes that very clear. He says God is the one who changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings.
That verse is basically the thesis statement for the whole book, isn't it?
It really is. It affirms that history has a divinely set course. For a people who feel like their lives are just adrift in the chaos of empire, that is an anchor.
So let's get to the dream itself. This giant statue made of 4 different metals.
The statue is a symbol of the whole succession of human governments that try to rule the world in their own power. subverting God's original plan for humanity.
Daniel identifies the head of gold as Babylon.
Right. Then the silver is the kingdom that follows, which is Media-Persia. The bronze is Greece under Alexander the Great. And then the legs of iron, which crush everything, represent Rome.
And the feet are that strange mixture of iron and clay. What's the significance there?
It points to a fatal internal weakness. The iron is still there, the raw military crushing power, but it's mixed with brittle clay. It suggests that this final human empire is unstable. It's held together by force, but it lacks true cohesion. It's strong and fragile at the same time.
Which makes it vulnerable.
Exactly. It's ready to be shattered. And that brings us to the climax of the vision. This stone, cut out by no human hand, smashes into the feet of the statue.
And the whole thing, iron, clay, bronze, silver, gold, it all just collapses into dust.
And that's the key. The stone represents the kingdom of God. And the fact that it's cut without human hands means God establishes his kingdom without our help, without any political process or human effort. It doesn't grow out of the human kingdoms. It annihilates them.
And then the stone grows into a mountain that fills the whole earth.
Right, which is a clear reference back to fulfilling Adam's original mandate to fill the earth and rule it righteously under God. The message is simple. Human empires will rise and fall, but God's kingdom will come and shall stand forever.
Okay, so that's the vision from the human perspective. A glorious, shining statue. But then chapter 7 gives us the same timeline from God's perspective.
Yes, and the imagery could not be more different. Instead of a magnificent statue, Daniel sees 4 grotesque, ravenous beasts coming up out of the sea.
Why beasts? What's the point of that shift?
The shift is the point. The statue is how the kings see themselves, powerful, glorious, civilized. The beasts are how God sees them, as cruel, destructive, and fundamentally dehumanizing.
So we have the lion for Babylon, the bear for Media-Persia, the 4-headed leopard for Greece.
And then this 4th beast, which is so terrible it doesn't even have an earthly comparison. Just a ferocious, iron-toothed monster that devours and tramples everything. That's Rome. This is what human governance looks like when it's detached from God. It's predatory.
And the vision zooms in on this 4th beast, and specifically on a little horn that comes up among its 10 horns.
Right. This little horn is a ruler who speaks boasts against God and wages war on the saints, and for a time he's successful. He represents that final, ultimate anti-God ruler who tries to wipe out God's people.
It's a period of intense persecution, but then the scene shifts completely from earth to heaven.
Yes, you get this amazing scene of the heavenly court. The Ancient of Days takes his seat on a throne of fire.
This is the ultimate reassurance, isn't it?
It is. It tells the exiles that no matter how chaotic things get on earth, there is a throne in heaven and judgment is coming. The court is seated, the books are open, and the beast is slain. The dominion of all these human empires is taken away.
And then comes the real climax of the vision, the introduction of this figure, one like a son of man.
He comes with the clouds of heaven, approaches the Ancient of Days, and is given everlasting dominion and a kingdom that will never be destroyed.
So who is this son of man?
Well, the term itself just means a human being. It's meant to contrast him with the beasts. Their rule was beastly. His will be truly human, righteous, and civilized. He's the new true Adam.
But there's more to it than that because he's coming on the clouds.
Exactly. In the Old Testament, riding the clouds is something only God does. It's a mark of deity. So this figure is somehow both fully human and fully divine. He's the God-man.
He's the stone from the chapter 2 vision.
He is. He's the one who will crush the kingdoms of this world. But then there's this interesting little twist in the interpretation that the angel gives Daniel.
It says the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom.
Right. First it says the Son of Man receives it, then it says the saints receive it.
So which is it? How do they both get it?
It shows the corporate nature of our union with Christ. He is the representative king. The saints reign because they are united to him. His victory becomes their victory. It's this incredible promise to the exiles that, in the end, God's people represented by their king will be the ones who rule.
So those big visions lay out the whole timeline. The final section of the book, chapters 8 through 12, then zooms back in and adds some very specific and difficult details.
It does. It adds a layer of realism. The message becomes less about immediate comfort and more about the need for long-term endurance through suffering.
Chapter 8 gets very specific, detailing the conflict between the ram, which is Media-Persia, and the goat, which is Greece.
Yes, the goat with the big horn that defeats the ram is a clear picture of Alexander the Great and his lightning-fast conquests.
And then that horn is broken, and four horns come up. Alexander's kingdom splits among his four generals, and from one of them comes another little horn.
And this one is historically identifiable as Antiochus Epiphanes, a Greek king who ruled in the 2nd century BC.
And the vision predicts his actions with startling accuracy.
It does. It predicts his vicious persecution of the Jews, his attempt to force them to adopt Greek culture, and his defilement of the temple in Jerusalem, what he calls the abomination that makes desolate. It even predicts the length of time it would last.
That level of detail must have been a powerful confirmation for the people reading it later that God really was in control of history.
For sure. But the prophecies, especially in chapter 11, then seem to move beyond Antiochus. He becomes a pattern or a type
A type of what?
of the final, ultimate enemy of God's people. The description of the king who exalts himself above every god goes far beyond what Antiochus actually did. It's preparing God's people for a much longer, more intense struggle. The exile is, in a sense, being extended through history.
Which brings us to chapter 9 and the famous 70 weeks prophecy. It starts with Daniel reading Jeremiah's prophecy that the captivity would last 70 years.
Right. And he prays this beautiful prayer of confession, basically asking God to act now that the 70 years are almost up. He's expecting restoration.
But the angel Gabriel comes and gives him an answer that must have been just, well, mind-blowing.
It must have been. Gabriel tells him that the full period of discipline isn't 70 years, but 70 weeks, or more accurately, 77s, 490 years.
So the physical return from Babylon isn't the final endpoint?
Not even close. It's just a down payment. The true final restoration that deals with sin once and for all and brings in everlasting righteousness, that requires something much bigger, much later. The 490 years are the new timeline.
And the timeline points to a very specific event.
It does. It says that after 69 of those weeks, or 483 years, the Anointed One, the Messiah, will be cut off or put to death.
And that timeline, calculated from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem, lines up remarkably well with the life and death of Jesus.
It's one of the most stunningly specific messianic prophecies in the Old Testament. But even after the Messiah is cut off, the prophecy says the struggle continues.
Right. It talks about a prince who is to come who will destroy the city and the sanctuary.
Which is almost certainly a reference to the Roman destruction of Jerusalem and the temple in AD 70. So the message is, even after the Messiah's first coming, the people of God will still be in a state of conflict with the beastly kingdoms of the world.
This long period of struggle, then, has a purpose.
Yes, the later chapters make it clear. This is a process of refinement, of purification. The saints will suffer, but it's meant to test them and cleanse them and make them ready for the kingdom.
And final deliverance comes, as chapter 12 says, when Michael the archangel arises.
And that's when you get the final, crucial piece of the whole puzzle, the promise of resurrection.
Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life and some to shame and everlasting contempt.
This is the climax of it all. The promises made way back to Abraham can't be fully realized for all the saints who have died throughout history until the resurrection. That's when the extended exile finally, truly ends, and a whole new era begins.
It's a message that goes so far beyond just getting back to Jerusalem. It points to the end of all things.
It's the ultimate hope, not just for political safety, but for a perfected, resurrected life in a new creation, all made possible through the victory of the Son of Man.
So when you pull it all together, the big conclusion of Daniel is just how completely God-centered it is. It's entirely theocentric.
It is. The message to the exiles and to us is that human rulers, presidents, kings, they do not control their own destiny. They have a brief moment of authority granted to them by Yahweh, who is working out his own master schedule for history.
And the hope the book gives isn't a naive one. It doesn't promise an easy life.
No, it's a very realistic hope. It confirms that this historical struggle we find ourselves in, this long exile, is an appointed time for God to refine his people. But it also confirms that victory is certain. It will be decisive and final when the kingdom of God, brought by the Son of Man, comes to crush all opposition and establish his righteous rule forever.
And if Babylon and Rome were types of worldly opposition to God, then it seems every period of trial we face, whether it's political chaos or cultural pressure, is part of that same story. It can feel like we're in exile. But Daniel assures us our hope isn't in a political fix. It's fixed on the end goal. That this testing is meant to purify us, to make us ready for that day when God's promises are completely fulfilled and the righteous are raised from the dead to finally see their king and reign with him.